In section 7.6, we're going to talk about the midpoint and distance in the coordinate plane. So let's look at the gray box at the middle of page 475. In this lesson, you will learn how to find midpoints and distance on a grid. You can use formulas to find the midpoint and the length of any segment in the coordinate plane. So, we're going to look at our key concept. The key concept is this on a number line. The coordinate of the midpoint is the average or mean of the coordinates of the endpoints. So, all you do is look at the formula. The formula states that you take the two coordinates, a plus b, and you divide it by 2. All it is the average or mean of the 2 points, because that's the point in the middle. Basically, you're finding the middle, the median. So, now, if you were on a coordinate plane, you're now actually going to use the coordinates, which is your x-coordinate and your y-coordinate. You find the average of them. All you do is take your x values, add them together, divide by 2. That's your x value of your midpoint. And then your y value, or your two y values added together, take half, and that's your y value. So those are your two formulas you need to know how to do. They're pretty basic. I mean, they're easy. They're just finding the average is all you're doing. And once you start using them, you're going to realize how easy this really is. In problem 1, we are going to start by finding the midpoint. So we're going to look at the got it problem. The got it problem, if you read it to yourself, says, segment JK has endpoints at -12 and 4 on a number line. What is the coordinate of its midpoint? All you have to do is add them together and divide by 2. That's all you do to find the midpoint. So, -12 plus 4 divided by 2. That would be -8 divided by 2. So the coordinate of the midpoint is -4. B. What is the midpoint of segment RS with endpoints 5, -10, and 3, 6? So now we have to use the formula on the front, where we find the average of your x values and find the average of the y values. So we are going to take, whoops, that's not what I wanted to do. All you have to do is add your x values together. 5 plus 3 divided by 2. Add your y values. Divide by 2. That gives you 8 divided by 2, which is 4. This gives you -10 plus 6, which is -4 divided by 2, which is -2. And therefore, your midpoint of segment RS is 4, -2. Notice the first one was on a number line, and the second one was on a coordinate grid, or a coordinate plane. On the top of page 477, it says, when you know the midpoint and the endpoint of a segment, you can use the midpoint formula to find the other endpoint. So if we look at the got it problem on problem 2, finding an endpoint, it says the midpoint of segment AB has coordinates 4, -9. Endpoint A has coordinates -3, -5. What is the coordinate of B? Basically what it's asking you is you have a segment AB and the midpoint, which is here. We know the midpoint is 4, -9. A is -3, -5. So it's asking, what is the coordinate of B? So in order to find the coordinates of endpoint B, we're going to use our formula. We know that our midpoint formula states that I take my x values, add them together, and divide by 2. So I know I have to take -3 plus my missing x value divided by 2. And then I take my y values and divide them by 2. And that's going to give me my midpoint. Well, I already know my midpoint is 4, -9. So what you have here are two separate equations. You have -3 plus x divided by 2 gives you 4. And you have -5 plus y divided by 2 gives you -9. Simple two-step equations. In the first one, we're going to we're going to get rid of the divide by 2. So we multiply both sides by 2. That gives me -3 plus x equals 8. I add 3. My x value then would be 11. Over here, I multiply by 2. That gives me negative 5 plus y equals negative 18. Add 5, that gives me negative 13. Therefore, my endpoint, or the coordinates of B, is 11 and negative 13. So we're going to look at number 3 on practice A. Number 3 says, the coordinates of point T are given. The midpoint of segment ST is 5, negative 8. Find the coordinates of point S. So then in number 3, it gives us that the point T is 112. And our midpoint is 5, negative 8. So we could say 1 plus x divided by 2 and 12 plus y divided by 2. And that gives us our midpoint, which is 5, negative 8. And you can skip that step if you just want to go ahead and write your two equations. 1 plus x divided by 2 equals 5. That means 1 plus x would equal 10. Subtract 1, your x-coordinate is 9. The y-coordinate is 12 plus y divided by 2 equals negative 8. 12 plus y equals negative 16. Subtract 12, negative 28. So, our midpoint, I'm sorry, not our midpoint, our endpoint of S would be 9, negative 28. At the bottom of page 477, we're going to talk about our key concept, the distance formula. Here's the good thing. You've done this before. In section 7.3, you learned how to find the distance between 2 points on a number line. To find the distance between 2 points in a coordinate plane, you can use the distance formula. The distance formula says this. You're going to take the squared root, and you are going to subtract your x-coordinates. You're going to subtract your y-coordinates. You square both of them, and then you add them together. And then you take the square root of your final answer. The distance formula is actually based on the Pythagorean theorem, which you've already done. So in problem 3 on page 478, let's do the got it problem. The got it problem, A, says that segment SR has the endpoints negative 2, 14, and 3, negative 1. What is the measure of the length of SR to the nearest tenth? So we want to find the distance of SR. So all you do is use the distance formula. All I do is I subtract my x's. So that would be 3 minus negative 2. I subtract my y's. That would be negative 1 minus 14. I square them, and then I add them together. So 3, that'd be plus 2. That gives me 5 squared. Plus negative 1 and negative 14, that gives me negative 15. It has to be in parentheses. You're squaring the negative and the 15. So that gives me 25 plus negative 15 squared. And negative 15 squared is 225. That gives me the square root of 250. And the square root of 250 gives me, if I rounded to the nearest tenth, 15.8. So my answer is 15.8. B asks, oh, we're going to skip B there. So ignore part B. We're going to go down to number 5. Number 5 says to use the points 0, 5 and 12, 3. Let's find the distance between each pair of points. So round to the nearest tenth. So I'm going to do D equals. Subtract my x's. 12 minus 0 squared. Plus subtract my y's. 3 minus 5 squared. And you can skip steps in here. 12 minus 0 is just 12. 12 squared is 144. 3 minus 5 is negative 2. Negative 2 times negative 2 is going to give me 4. So that's going to be the square root of 148. And the square root of 148 gives you, if rounded to the nearest tenth, 12.2. Problem 4 is actually finding distance as well. So we're going to go right down to the practice, number 7. Number 7 says, for exercises 7 and 8, use the map at the right. Find the distance between the cities to the nearest tenth. Number 7 wants us to find the distance from Brookline to Charleston. So Brookline is at the ordered pair 8, 2. Charleston is at the point 4, 5. So all we have to do now is use the distance formula. Subtract my x's, and remember, you can just go ahead and skip some steps here. So if I subtract my x's, 4 minus 8, that gives me negative 4 squared, plus, subtract my y's, 5 minus 2 is 3 squared. That gives me 16 plus 9. That gives me 25. So on number 7, I will get 5. So the distance between the cities is 5. There is no vocabulary review in section 7.6, but you need to know the formula to find the midpoint on a number line, and you also need to know the formula to find the coordinates of the midpoint on a coordinate plane, and then you also need to know the distance formula. So while there is no vocab words, you still need to know the 3 formulas to find the midpoints and to find the distance between 2 endpoints.